like this video's titled "Labour are right-wing Tories," which is very, very self-explanatory. I feel like you've almost got the video done already, but best to back it up just a bit. So, in my view, it's a state superstructure, it's a propaganda matrix, it's a divide and rule thing. Like on that is a right-wing system because it's to fool us so it divides the working class and it sustains itself because of that, because we can never break through much because we're always split. And the political parties can spin it so they've got a vibe with the public or whatever, but basically that's the substance, that's the meat. The divide and rule propaganda matrix, they're part of it. That's the open world. So when you look at America right now, you've got all that UFO stuff. That's the shady secret world that's doing wrong. And the open world, you see, the reason why they're so pro UFOs in America isn't because they don't do anything shady. It's because the cover-ups against them as well. They've always thought UFOs are stupid, and now congressmen and congresspeople are desperately or clamoring to put videos as well. Includes that. I'm usually on about the open world divide and rule tricks, the propaganda matrix of red, like stuff that people need, money, and how it prevents that happening. How we always seem to be spinning our wheels because those that got power don't want to give it up by redistributing it. Anyway, so like that is a very right-wing inequality thing, and I think something like it's resulted in something like the bottom 3.4 billion people in the world, all their wealth combined is about as much as the top 26 people in the world. Because I remember when I was a kid, people used to say that inequality will get worse by the 2020s, and now we've got, like I just said, the top 26 people in the world have as much wealth as the bottom 3.4 billion, which is like half the world all combined. And I read an article the other day saying inequality is not enough on the world scale for them to tax these big corporations in order to do universal basic income. They would only agree with it if it got more extreme. And then I saw that and I thought, so 20 odd people having as much as 3.4 billion people, isn't inequality enough yet? Okay, I don't understand. I never will. I could go on my deathbed in years to come. I'll never understand. I'm not sure they know the figures, maybe. Or maybe it's just very right wing. But anyway, this right wing cartel, it doesn't exist just because of a few Tories or a few Republicans or whatever. It exists because they got the support of the Democrats and Labour and stuff like that. I just start to say it's so obvious. It's so obvious. I mean, look. If I say this right, Democrats and Labour, they're against student loans, they're against UBI, they're not anti-war, they're for the propaganda matrix they're always going about, they're not for low housing costs, they're for high housing costs, they're not for redistribution, they're not for a clamp down on the propaganda matrix, they're pro-war, they're not for some climate new deal, they're not for getting rid of nukes, so they're not for taxing billionaires till the pipsqueak. So they're in a consensus with the right, and that is always going to be the case, I think. So they're the enemy, not because they're left wing, but because they are right wing. That's the point. Otherwise, you'd be able to say, oh, they're pro UBI, they're pro redistribution, they're pro peace. It'd be like the bloody 60s. It's not. They hold it up, especially in the States, where I think that they've got the majority power, I think, in the news media, doing government. And I just get the feeling, and their influence is stronger than the Republicans. You see that on UFO stuff. If the Republicans do UFO stuff, it doesn't get to our media in Europe. Whereas as soon as Democrats put themselves forward, or Democrats supporting media puts themselves forward, then it does. They've got something. They've got an edge. I mean, like the New York Times, the Washington Post, or even the politicians like Podesta and Hillary and all this. they seem to have more pull, whereas OSC, what she called um, Alexandra Cortez, and she's New York House of Representatives. She's got tons of pull, and so is Gillibrand, the other New York politician. And you don't get any equivalent in the South and all. I mean, it's the way of the world. Anyway. But they're good on that because the cover up is against them as well. So like, also there are exceptions, of course. So that OSC is an exception, right? That Alexandra Cortez, AOC. So, but individuals don't make any difference. You see what I mean? Alexandria Cortez, just because she's a politician I can agree with, doesn't mean that America is now off the hook or the Democrats are off the hook. It's like, it doesn't make any difference. One politician cannot change that culture, so it doesn't mean anything. I mean, like, if you look at it, I'll put it this way. I asked the AI just out of curiosity the other day, are the Kennedy dynasty largely liberal Democrats, like the majority of Democrats are, or conservative Democrats, which a minority are? And it said, oh, definitely liberal Democrats. And it backed it up with all the diplomacy on war stuff rather than trying to start wars, and just their own statements and their own leanings. But I mean, it doesn't make any difference, does it? Or even, you know what I mean? I don't think that you have a Kennedy president. I don't think that would change the state superstructure. It's like propping it up. So it becomes guilty by that anyway. So I don't think that makes any difference. So and if it did, well, it's tough because he can't prove it because he got killed. So basically, my point is, as I said, in the open world, you can tick all these policies off, and it shows they're not even hiding it, sort of thing. I mean, like, so America won't change under Biden. Yet, if you listen to Biden talk on ideology, he would say he thinks trickle-down economics is stupid. But then he presides over it anyway. So I don't understand. It's just another thing. It's like if it was the other way around. It's like, I said, I'm not a communist because I believe in market as an effective way of distributing goods, as sacrosanct as anything, as sacrosanct as UBI, right? But if it was the other way around, and in a communist society, a truly communist one, and the guy said that he thinks communism's stupid while presiding over it, that's what Biden does when he slags off the right. It just doesn't make any difference. You might as well have said that he supports it. So it doesn't make any difference. So basically, I go so far as to say that it's a cartel. It's a cartel. If it was an analogy of people, relationships, I would have the two main parties in this country in the States sleeping together. A couple who are always whinging at each other, but really they're one to the extent beyond friendship. It's like get a room, that sort of thing. I don't buy that it's anything else because we've had like a century of this now, and I'm not fooled. It's just not. If it was different, I would say so. If it was a party that was bringing student grants in, bringing UBI in against war, etc., redistribution and everything, I think it's happened. I do think it's happened in 1945, and straight away within about 7 years, they were back to being one again. So, well, within 2 years, I exaggerated. So that's why I call it a propaganda matrix, partly, because just the existence of how vastly unequal it is maintained by these same people who are always shouting opinions away. The difference between the ones who call themselves right and ones who call themselves left is just so minuscule. It's so. I mean, I'd go so far as to say the right are more left wing on war. Definitely, and that could end up, a nuclear holocaust. So, what does that mean? I mean, it's ridiculous. It's like what in America it results in many people on the left voting for the right and many people on the right voting for the left. It's ridiculous. It just shows that they just won. And then I look at it and I think, yeah, the Democrats are what they've been accused of. They're totally pro-war, and the Republicans are half anti-war. They're telling the truth on Russia, but they don't mention the China bit when they say they're anti-war. But if you press them on China, you suddenly think, so you're not anti-war then, you just got China in your sights, not Russia. And you get that from, what's he called? This is Fox News. I forgot his name. Well, anyway, you know the guy who used to do Fox News, and he goes on about how anti-war he is all the time, and yet he clearly pushing for war against China. I forgot his name. What is it again? I don't want to look because it'll take up too much time. So, you see, if you just go along with the spin, then I don't know. I mean, it's not just. I think the right wing, the right wing are like Thatcherites, like who claim to be Thatcherites, must be absolutely disgusted with their own party now because they've got really snubbed up now. And I remember Thatcher used to say, "This is what we are for," and it was against the socialist of all parties. That introduction to a Hayek book that which Hayek put in himself. It wasn't someone else saying it in the Hayek book. It was his own preface. So like, it's like just a cartel, completely a cartel. And the division is fake. It's fake. That's what I'm trying to say. Because if it wasn't fake, you would be able to see that it's not fake with the policies. It's just tough. And you also get the likes of Dominic Grieve, Ken Clark, Michael Heseltine, Rob Stewart, David Gork, and all that, saying that they're more that they can see that they are not so much with the party they were with because the other parties are more like conservatives than the conservatives. So it all gets entangled like in a mess because it's a cartel. It's just so easy to see. So that also implies they've written a book now, by the way, and it's out in September. Now they are probably going to be the next set of conservatives, right? And yet they are closer to Labour and the Lib Dems than they are this Conservatives. So what the hell does that mean? You tell me. I mean, one of the contributors to that new book is literally in the Liberal Democrat Party, literally, and it's it's called The Case for the Right. That means right wing. That's the front page cover. And another one of them is voting Lib Dem. So, no, it's just a cartel. It's a cartel. So, I wouldn't mind it being a cartel if it wasn't vastly unequal, but it is. So that's the problem. And if we had these policies that I mentioned before, they would influence the value of each other because they're all getting money to people like low housing costs, universal basic income, student grants. So it wouldn't just be that you just pile them all in as like high, because one would influence the other. Or if one was so high, such UBI, then you wouldn't need the others. But that just depends. Now, I'm not, even though I'm happy with being class war, I am not happy with being labelled a commie, because I'm for the market. It's sacrosanct. It's the only way to distribute goods across a wide area, and it's effective. It works. And so do these things, by the way, the redistribution things. Every nation's spending trillions more than it did in the Victorian era in real terms, billions more if they're a small nation. The excuses for not doing them are excuses. It's to maintain power. The inflation thing is the best reason they've got, but that's always factored in. So, and I mean, this government's done lots of public spending, and some of it have been inflationary, but it's better off with it than without it. So I don't understand that point. It only means that you wouldn't just bring something in all in one go. That's all it means, more or less. Or you tax it away, and then you haven't created any inflation anyway. You tax. So when you bring UBI in, you don't just give it to the middle class and rich, which is always one of the accusations of what we are doing. Because on the surface, that's what it is, universal. But the money's taxed away from the middle class and the rich on two grounds. On one, because what's the point of giving the money if I've got it? And two, because otherwise it would be inflationary. So you tax it away from them. So, I mean, NHS is left wing because it's redistributive. But no one ever says, oh, we're giving healthcare to the rich. Why are we doing that? It's not redistributive. It's because the person who's rich is being taxed more than if it was private. You know, I mean, they don't be paid for private healthcare. They're paying that plus more. They're paying for many people's healthcare. It's redistribution. So obvious. It's like free education. No one ever questions that as, oh, why are we giving them free education? If it was all private, then millions of people would be illiterate still, because they'd still be in Victorian conditions. Millions of people wouldn't be able to read and write, and they would rate themselves, would have even less self-belief. They would never go to college. They'd never go to uni. They'd never break out of a situation. And UBI is the same principle as education and NHS. It's saying that people's material conditions, amount of bread, is just as important as healthcare and education. And I think I agree with healthcare and education being 100% important. So I just think it's the same principle. It's not that they shouldn't. It's not about getting rid of people's desire to work or anything either. It's like, that's a myth. That's the same sort of myth as that we don't let them give them education because they're not going to make use of it and they'll fail the degree and stuff. It's the same sort of thing as what was said there. It's a myth. It's to get rid of poverty. It's not to get rid of people being aspirational at all. I mean, one of my policies is student grants would get more aspiration because more people from poor backgrounds would go to uni and become middle class professionals. So that is what I think. That's what I think. The UBI thing is not to stop that. I would encourage more aspiration from the bottom, not less. And I think that student grants thing would result in more going to uni as well. Because partly because people have a good reason to be worried about the costs of going to uni, and partly because they fear it has, but maybe it would be okay if they did go. But the grants will guarantee them that it was safe to go to uni and have no money worries about it. And again, the grant thing would be offset by UBI. So if UBI was high enough, then the student grant wouldn't even be necessary. So it depends. Housing is the other universal that I think there should be, because I can't understand how come healthcare and education are so privileged over cash and housing. It's just, if they're correct that they should be universal in 4 to 16-year-old education and healthcare, then I don't understand why housing isn't. If we had all this stuff, life would be easier than it was for, I don't know, Victorians. But isn't it meant to be? Isn't that a good thing? I mean, in Sweden, since soon after World War II, all their stuff to do with incomes is like a percentage of the average, or a percentage of what you had when you were working, and a minimum floor for those who haven't made enough, and they're still a market capitalist economy, the social democratic version of that. That's all. And I'm having the market sacrosanct, and I'm on the left of the Social Democrats. So, because it makes sense. I mean, it's already got a situation whereby those born into privilege, which is a good thing. That's a good thing. Class war doesn't mean that you wish no one was or you dislike them. It's a good thing that people are born into privilege to some extent. I don't think privilege should be billionaire level. And they're therefore surrounded by self-belief. Whereas if you were born, I don't know, in Victorian era in poverty, you're surrounded by illiteracy and numeracy and hopelessness. Now we're not that, but the working class are not born into great self-belief either. We're in the middle of those two things somewhere. I don't know which way we stand. Probably the privilege, considering they couldn't even read, but still not born in a big self-belief because the parents were not strong self-belief, because they had the same disadvantage. And that is really hard to tackle. So, like, for instance, you could do many of the policies I advocate for, and things would be improved, but the self-belief might still not be there. It's not utopia, this. But then I would just say, well, would you prefer to be like the poor in America or the poor in Sweden? I would say that Sweden might be credited with having got rid of poverty. And I also would say that I bet it's impossible to prove this next point. So logically, though, the poor in social democratic Sweden should on average have more self-belief than those born into the slums of America. If you get the closest to proof of that, it is evidence, maybe not solid proof, is that when studies are done that are global, so they're taking it by nation, the well-being scores are highest in the Scandinavian Nordic nations, which includes Sweden, the other ones being Norway, Denmark, Finland, and Iceland. Their figures are so much higher than the figures in the States. Really, there's a massive gap. But I think that Scandinavia still might need reforming if the AI revolution is so dramatic, and reforming in favour of something more like universal basic income. I'm not sure that they'll be at the front of the queue for that one, because they'll be a victim of their own success, perhaps. I noticed that the clamour for UBI is stronger in America, Canada, the UK, nations like that, rather than Scandinavia, and I'm suspicious that's the reason, because the poor have got a decent deal already, so they're not. Japan is at the front of the queue for UBI, and going by stereotypes here, thinking that's probably because they are more willing to embrace AI looking after people and stuff, whereas in the UK and America, the culture would be more, oh, you're not looking after my whatever, child, pet, whatever, because we're more suspicious of technology than they are. So they'll be embracing it and then thinking, oh, we're going to need universal basic income to compensate. Whereas we're more likely to say, oh, technology won't do all the jobs. So I suspect Japan will be correct in 50 years, looking back at whether AI was going to do almost all the jobs. Because, I mean, we were even, in the UK and the US, we even reacted badly to microwaves. So I think AI looking after people will get denied at first and then accepted later, just like microwaves were, when we realised that they weren't really going to radiate us. I mean, I'm just as bad. I wouldn't let an AI look after my dog, even though I suspect that I'm being irrational. I think I wouldn't have suspected microwaves of radiating people. They've just come out now. And we don't realise it, but we already allow planes to fly, and without much pilot intervention. So I think we think that the pilot's, got his hands on the wheel more often than they have. But so, yeah, I'm on Japan's side on that really, but sort of got a bit of the West culture of being techie phobia. A bit of that is in me, because I won't let it walk my dog. That's the reason. Well, in conclusion, this video was to highlight that I include the centre left, generally speaking, as in bed with the right wing propaganda matrix, therefore as bad as anything like the Tories, whatever, they are the same. And to not fully understand that is precisely a fall for the propaganda matrix. So and the fact that many people do fall for it is a success for the propaganda matrix, because it sustains it. It needs that people to fall for that. It's as important as the divide and rule of the working class, which also sustains it. Definitely, there's no doubt. There's just no doubt whatsoever. Not a single speck of doubt. Again, that doesn't mean that I'm advocating for something that is against our culture, because if you look to the polls, people want UBI. A lot of people are anti-war. Students are. I don't think it's just students who want a redistribution of them. I think that's quite common. Housing costs, the sky. That's all of this seems to have the popular support, I think. So it's the propaganda matrix that stops it coming in, mainly, I think. You get in the United States, you can see it better because it's not your own country then. And in the United States, it's not that people don't want universal healthcare. It's the propaganda matrix propagandizes it as communism, which puts some people off. I'm sure it puts enough people off to have stopped it coming in. many of the lawmakers in the United States will be propagandized themselves. So they're a mixture of party propagandist and party propagandized, definitely. And if universal healthcare did come into the US, they would shut up with the word communism, just like they did with free healthcare, which was originally, in their view, communism, which now it isn't, even though it's the same principle as things they claim are communism. So they are just propagandized completely. It's easy to see for me with America because it's so publicized. So I see their error of their ways. And it's definitely a propaganda matrix. It's a military-industrial complex. They spend billions and billions and flood private defence contractors with money, subsidising them to the hilt. They wouldn't do that with the poor. They wouldn't subsidise them to the hilt, of course. And that's why that's one of the reasons why they don't bring in universal healthcare. Just one of the reasons, because they're spending so much on subsidising private health contractors, which super $1 billion subsidised, and but even with all that spending, they could still easily afford universal healthcare, even with wasting all that money on the defence contractors, because they are still probably the least public spending in the modern Western world of any nation. So when they say they cannot afford universal healthcare, it is as big a lie as a billionaire saying they can't afford a bar of chocolate. It's that much of a lie. It's not nearly true, or it's not a little bit false. It is outrageous. It's totally outrageous. It's massively outrageous. It's often said that by critics of that statement, that they talk like they are a third world nation. America gets the market and it creates vast wealth, and it just does nothing with it. It just lets itself be an oligarchy, which means a nation that is for a clique and everyone else has to struggle. And in conclusion, this is partly seen through, but I don't know how much. Meaning, I hear a lot of Americans use the word oligarchy against their own nation. Military-industrial complex, they've been accusing themselves of that since the 60s or something, or the 50s, whatever. But it hasn't made any difference. So, there's movement on war stuff. I mean, the Republicans used to talk up war as like mixed in with defence, and now they talk it down as if it's a bad thing. I'm just thinking, like, I don't know what's going on there. It's a bit weird. But nevertheless, they still have a military and industrial complex, no matter what they say. Now, so in conclusion, in Britain, Labour, and in the US, the Democrats are part of the right-wing propaganda matrix state superstructure. And until something massive changes, that will continue to be the case forever. End of video.